Hello there. This is your favorite comrade Sergey, and you tuned in to my program Ushanka Show. Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи.
Вы смотрите программу Ushanka Show.
Just a friendly reminder that my book American Diaries is available on Amazon.com, or shoot me an email if you would like to have a signed copy. Thank you. So today we're gonna talk about bicycles, and it will be mostly like a story time. I'm just gonna share my memories, and we'll talk a little bit here and there about different models of the bicycles available in the Soviet Union. As with many other things, I was quite a late bloomer, I think is the correct word, when it came to learning how to ride the bicycle. So I learned quite late how to swim. I think I was in 8th grade when I finally figured out how to swim pretty decent. And I learned how to ride the bike maybe when I was already like 11 or so. My parents never purchased for me a small kiddish bike like, tricycles or just a small bike with the training wheels. So I learned like right away how to ride the big adult size bike, and it happened in the village of my father. So not the village I constantly talk about in northern Ukraine. We're talking about the village in the Zhytomyr region. But before we move any further in the story, let's learn a new Russian word. Velosiped. Velosiped. So velosiped means bicycle. Okay, and now back to the story. So when I was 11 or 12, something like that, my father decided to take me with him to the village. I think he was helping to harvest potatoes. That's what a lot of city folk did. They went back to the villages to help their parents to dig potatoes. And he took me along with a secret plan to teach me how to ride a bicycle while we're there. I didn't know about it. So when we arrived there one day, he offered me like, hey, I want to give you a ride on the bike. You want to go? And it means like, you have a full size adult size bicycle. So you just sit on the frame and the second person is just pedaling and gives you a ride somewhere. So of course, which kid would refuse an offer to give you a bike ride? So of course I hopped on the frame and my dad rode the bike somewhere. I remember there's like a dirt road and the cornfields on both sides. I think he rode the bike towards the local milk farm. And then when we got there, he said, now you gotta ride the bike back and I'll help you. So yeah, this is how I started riding the bike. There was this adult size bike, and I remember I started pedaling. Of course, I lose control. My dad runs behind me, and I just remember I was crashing on the corn to the right. Then we get the bike out. He got me straight again. I'll start pedaling, pick up speed. He let me go. I ride for a while. Then, of course, I lose control, and I go to the left, back in the corn. So I didn't hurt myself falling, but yeah, it took forever to get back to the village. It was fun to ride with my dad, but it wasn't that much fun when I had to ride on my own back. And I could barely be over the frame. I wasn't tall enough to sit on the actual seat. So I was standing on the bike, riding it, barely, have enough length for my legs to reach pedals. So it's kind of like you ride on the bike and you grind it on the frame a little bit. But that was the day when I learned how to ride the bike. Then, of course, I got more confident, and we were there for about a week. So every day I would go on the bike ride. And of course, I will keep on crashing because I was just still quite green when it comes to riding bikes. And every time I'd crash on the bike, I'll hit my nuts on the frame because I was literally sitting, standing on that frame. So that was constantly. And one road I was taking all the time was basically was built using concrete blocks, so flat, kind of like. So if you fall off the road, you kind of bike jumps and then you hit frame right there, and that was very painful. So when we got back to Kiev, my dad proudly announced to my mom that now our son knows how to ride the bike, and I was proud too, but I was complaining that I'm in pain. And when my mom asked me to take my underwear and looked what was going on, she was horrified because all down there, like that legs, and my say junk was like dark blue color, was one huge bruise from constantly hitting that bike frame. So my mother gave her dad a hell because she was afraid that I won't be able to have kids later when I grow up because I totally just smashed uh, my testicles. So yeah, that was that was a quite experience learning how to ride the bike. So I'm gonna try to use some American humor. I wasn't a teenager yet. I was only 12 or 11, but already learned the meaning of blue balls. But since I knew now how to ride the bike, my father purchased me a real bicycle. My very first bike was called Minsk. It was built in Minsk bike factory in Belarus. So I had it not for a long time because it got stolen. So that's kind of an issue owning a bicycle in the city. If you live like in an apartment building, like most people lived in Kiev or other big Soviet cities, you have to drag your bike inside of the apartment. We lived on the second floor, so it wasn't too bad, but still, 12-year-old kid trying to drag full-size adult bike on the second floor. And then, of course, I had to drag through the whole apartment on our balcony. So that was a pain in the butt. So I kind of became lazy, and what I started doing is started parking the bike just outside the apartment. There was this little, like a cubby hole where the trash unit was. So I showed that before video how we did the trash in the Soviet apartments. Looking back, I probably could ask my dad to get me some kind of chain and a lock so I could just lock the bike around this trash pipe. But my parents, for some reason, didn't care much, so I was just parking bike there. And then, during the weekday, you go to school, and then I come back, grab my bike, go for a ride. And one day I came from school, I looked, and my bike was gone. And so I probably owned it for less than 2 months. And it's like 100 rubles, so almost a monthly salary of my parents, one of my parents. So they were quite upset. So since then, they said we're not buying your bike anymore. And then in the village, pretty much every family, every household had usually one bicycle, maybe two. I remember a friend of mine, they had two bicycles. Like they had a lady style bike with that frame that kind of goes low, step through, right? And the regular bike. My grandfather, Sergei, had a bike that he brought from Germany, where he was a prisoner of war there for quite a few years. So he had this heavy German bike, but it had flat tires. But still, I rode it back and forth, and it's probably worth a lot of money now, but it's gone. Next time when I owned a bicycle, Soviet Union was gone. So it happened, I think, maybe in 92 or 93, because I remember I paid with coupons. So we had this temporary currency in Ukraine called coupon. So after, we couldn't use Soviet rubles anymore, and they weren't ready to introduce real Ukrainian currency. They had this temporary currency called coupon. The price was ridiculous. It's about $12 that I paid for that bike. It's called Turist. It was made in Kharkov in Ukraine, and I mean $12 at that time was quite a bit of money. I think my salary was $6 a month, something like that at that time. Had gears, so that's kind of like a road bike with gears. Pretty neat. And also my friends purchased at that time. It's like was situation we had hyperinflation, so everyone was like trying to get rid of coupons if you have any extra. So you will buy anything you can, or dollars or some goods. So two of my friends also bought same bike. So we had three tourist bikes, and we rode almost every evening, and we put a lot of kilometers on them. I believe the first season I owned the tourist bike, I put probably close to 1,000 kilometers for one season. That was a lot, and we didn't use helmets. Um, and that bike had plastic seats, so that was pretty hard to ride on. Twice I went on a long distance bike rides from Chernigov all the way to my village, and it's about 100 kilometers, so pretty decent amount. Took two different routes. One year I went through Snovsk, another time I went for Gorodnya. Good memories. That was quite challenging bike rides, but yeah, that was pretty cool. Later, and it's kind of a silly situation, I end up purchasing the speedometer. So I had to purchase electric speedometer so I see my speed. I had a hard time buying it from my friend because I paid $12 for the bike, but speedometer was $20. So this is kind of just like, that doesn't make any sense, right? That your bicycle is less money than speedometer on your bicycle. Kind of similar. I told you already that I purchased the Mosin Nagant rifle, and I believe I paid like $125 or something like that. And then I decided I would like to buy a sniper scope for my rifle. Of course, later I found out I can't use a scope on my rifle, but a scope is like 250 bucks, and I bought a rifle for 120, and I was like, okay, I can't do it. That's ridiculous. But this is what I did with my bike. I bought a speedometer for $20 and installed it on a $12 bike. Strangely enough, I still remember most of my bike crashes, which happened many, many years ago. I don't remember what happened 2 weeks ago, but I still remember quite vividly what happened 20 years ago or even 30 years ago. One time in the early 80s, my grandma was still alive. I rode my friend's bike to the post office to get her pension. My grandma worked all her life at the collective farm without being paid for so-called trudodень, so you were required to work a specific amount of days for collective farm without pay. And her pension was really small, only 12 rubles a month, because since she didn't make any money and the pensions were based on your salary, she just got the minimum pension. So on the way back, I was hauling ass on this dirt road, what was more like sand road in the field, and I decided to switch lanes, but it's just a single lane road. And so there where the tires hit, that's when only lanes you have. So I did a sharp turn in the sand, and bike kind of turned 90 degrees, and I flew and I hit my head really hard and my elbows and knees on the ground, knocked the air out of me, and it was pretty ugly. I didn't scratch anything because I was on sand, but I remember I had to sit down for a while and recover, put my thoughts together because I got hurt pretty bad. Another time I was riding the bike. I was older then. I had a friend, younger brother of my friend, riding on the frame, so like in the front of me, and I was the guy who was pedaling, and we were going this narrow path, which was kind of going around very close to the electric post, and I was going fast, and I didn't make a turn fast enough, so I caught that electric pole with my arm, with the steering, and once again, bike sharply stopped when I caught that pole, and we just flew off the bike. That was mostly funny because we didn't get hurt, but that was quite a flight. One time it wasn't a crash, but I was riding the bike in the village again. Most of the time I rode the bike in the village, my friends' bikes. I was on the way from the store after buying bread, and it was just like nice, quiet day. I'm just riding the bike, and this little nasty dog, like I don't mind when dogs bark at you, but this one is kind of snuck up on me quietly. He was right next to my leg when he barked, and it scared the living Jesus out of me. I almost fell off the bike, and I was like, my arms were shaking when I got home because it just was so unexpected. It was pretty ugly. Another time we were riding bikes in late night, so we would go to the village club, that former church that turned into the club and then got turned back into the church. And when you ride the same road for so many times, you like remember it. So that was dark. no street lights, but we were flying because we knew where to turn, where to go straight when it goes up and it goes down. And so I'm riding the bike, and once again I have the younger brother of my friend with me in the front on the frame. And suddenly I feel like a bike started going down, and I was like, I don't remember any big indentation here in the road. I'm not sure what's going on next, and my knees hit the ground. We couldn't understand what's going on, so we crashed. And what happened, the bike's frame actually got disconnected. So this whole bike is kind of folded into itself, and I felt really bad because it wasn't my bike. I borrowed it from our neighbor, so I had to take it to the collective farm repair shop to weld the frame. But yeah, that was really weird because it's dark, you don't see what's going on. Suddenly you feel like you're going down, and then your knees hit the ground. That was really bizarre. When I still had my Minsk bike back in Kiev before it got stolen, one time I was riding it home, and I was going really fast, so there's kind of like a slight incline, so you can pick up speed really well, and it's Kiev, so it's a blacktop road. That suddenly I decided to make a sharp turn into another road, and that was a gravel patch, and I didn't realize that you don't want to turn sharp and something has a loose gravel. And it was summer, I was wearing shorts, so I lost control. The bike, slid on the rocks, and I fell. So my left side got really badly bruised and ripped skin because of I was just wearing shorts, so all my left side was bleeding. My bike got locked up, so I couldn't ride it. So I had to limp home, crying, bleeding badly from my left side of my leg and my elbows, I think, too. I mean, the whole left side was just bloody mess. And when I finally made it home, dragged my bike on the second floor, and the doorbell, my parents had some kind of birthday party. I don't remember why, but there was a bunch of guests in the living room, and there's me coming in all bloody, crying. I was a mess. And we had one spot in the village, which is like a nice hill, and that road got blacked up sometimes in the 80s, so we liked a lot to ride down that hill, and I brought my little brother there quite often, and he would sit on the frame while we're flying down the hill. And looking back, I was like, man, we could really get hurt really bad on that road because you could go super fast. But I did manage to crash with my brother, and that's when I was looking back, think about that hill that we were flying off. One time we were riding to my friends. I think we went to watch the movie since my grandparents never had a TV. And at that time, I think it was later when they passed away and we used their house as a summer home. So we even didn't have a power. They cut off the wires. So we used candles and a kerosene lamp. So I was riding the bike with my little brother, Tom, and he was sitting on the frame. And we were going pretty fast. And somehow his leg got caught on the front wheel. He was just probably dangling his legs. So his leg kind of locked the front wheel. We flew over the steering wheel, not steering wheel, but front of the bike, crashed really bad, and his leg got like stripped to the bone. It was ugly mess, so I had to carry him. Yeah, that was the ugliest crash, I think, because my brother got hurt, not me. And then of course he couldn't walk for a while, so I had to carry him around. So later that summer, like we go mushroom picking or go hiking in the woods, whatever. My mother like, okay, take your brother with you. So I had to carry him everywhere since it was my fault for that crash. So I still have pictures when I hold him in my arms and his leg is all bandaged. And yeah, I carry him a lot. I paid the price for my crazy bike riding. And back, in the 80s, even early 90s, even after the Soviet Union was no more, we still had open borders between Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. So one time, it was maybe like 93, 94, me and my friends, we rode bikes. So, I brought my tourist bike to the village. It was one of those summers. And from our village to the border is about, I don't know, 15, 20 kilometers. And it's kind of neat because in that area, there's one point where three borders come together. So we got Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia, all the borders in one spot. So they have actually a monument there to the friendship of three nationalities: Ukrainians, Russians, and Belarusians. Right now, of course, it's kind of ironic because there's not much friendship going on between Ukrainians and Russians. And now we have, of course, border patrols, borders are closed, customs. I mean, you can't just get there like we used to. We just used to ride the bike right there and they're like, hey, check it out. See how fast we can visit three countries. You just start hauling ass, that in a circle drive around the monument, and you can visit all three countries in less than a minute. So that was pretty neat. It was a cool bike ride. Since I moved to America, I've owned bike again. Actually, I own a couple of bikes. For road biking, I have a Giant Cityscapes. It's pretty inexpensive. I think I paid like $500 for new. And I like to ride it on the roads, of course. And one time I participated in the so-called ODRAM, 1 day ride across Michigan. It's like 140 miles or something. It's pretty much from Montague, Michigan on the west coast to Bay City on the east coast. It took us all day, almost died, but I made it. So that was quite a ride. It happens every year, but I think I was once and done. And my second bike is a mountain bike. It's called Intense Spider. I bought it used on eBay, I believe for $800. They're pretty pricey bikes. They're like frame itself in a new condition, about $3,000. Made in California. Of course, in Michigan we don't have mountains, but we have trails in the forest close by where I live in Andrews University. So I use that bike there quite a bit. It's a lot of fun. I truly like to have a mountain bike. Okay, so that was my bicycle velocipede story time. And in my next video, I'm gonna cover different models of Soviet bikes that were available back in the USSR. And mostly bikes were used in the countryside, in the villages. That was the kind of method of transportation for the villagers. Not many people had cars. Some people had motorcycles, but the most popular way of moving around in the villages was, of course, a bike. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye. Hey, by the way, cool merch for cool comrades is available at the Ushanka store at teespring.com. And if you love my channel and would like to show your support, please click on the link below this video and become the patron of the Ushanka Show. For as little as $1, you can help us grow and create the new, interesting videos about the life in Soviet